listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, good evening, and welcome to the third in this series of pre-Gemini full moon webinar meditations. We have been told by the Tibetan that the Christ meets with the assembled hierarchy for 3 days before the actual full moon of Gemini, and that each of these meetings has a different keynote. The keynote for the first day, 2 days ago, was love. The keynote yesterday, resurrection. And the keynote for today is contact. And we'll be focusing on that as we go along after our initial alignments. The actual full moon is on the 13th, Friday, and the GMT time for it is 4:11 and 27 seconds a.m. in the morning, Universal Time. So if you're on daylight time, make sure not to become confused, because GMT is not the current London time, which is 1 hour later. But I keep it as Universal Time to help us all be clear and definite. It doesn't change. Well, one can feel these energies really growing. The high point of spiritual love in the year is reached at this time. This is, after all, the Christ's festival, as he gathers all of human aspiration into himself and stands as the God-man, presenting it to Shambhala for the return, downflow, and blessing. And the Buddha is also cooperating with him at this time. So often we think that the Buddha is only involved in the Wesak festival, but in fact also at this festival. And it was really amazing how during that great challenge that occurred in the last century, when the forces of materialism attempted their attack upon humanity, how strongly the Buddha and the Christ were working together during these festivals for the salvation, really the preservation of humanity. And today we are also faced with dire challenges, which I believe will emerge in fuller comprehension during the next 10 or so years. We have 11 years before the fateful and extremely important year 2025, when the great conclave of hierarchy will meet. It's the meeting that occurs every 100 years. And I think we will see how much this energy of love is needed in order to offset some of the dangers that are inherent in this situation. The attitude of right human relations must be established by all who can understand this. So as disciples in the world, we have a tremendous opportunity and responsibility during the next 11 years to see that this happens within whatever scope of power we can manage. The proper soul connection between people is emphasized at this time of Gemini, a true communication between people that is a soul communication based upon love, based upon somehow the realization that we are all externalizations of the one infinite being. And though we seem to be dual, and must function as if there are perhaps two selves, a higher and lower self. One day it shall be realized that there is only one self, in two modes, maybe even three modes, if we include the monad. So rather than give in to the illusion of duality, it is our opportunity at this point to realize that the seeming duality is actually a oneness with the apparent dual factors in the closest type of interplay. We all need and want that kind of soul interplay between the soul and the personality, so that a fluid synthesis can be created. So often we think that Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and in a way it is, because it makes possible that dialogue between our higher self and the lower self. But if we are to go further with the idea, we will find that the great second-ray planet Jupiter has a still higher function in relation to Gemini, relating the spirit to the soul-infused personality. And so many of us are at the point where we can begin to understand what is the spirit, what is this identicality which exists between all of us, this sameness, this beingness, which fuses together all of the apparent dualities into synthesis. So these are some of the realizations we can have at this point of high contact. That's our word for the evening, contact. Well, at least it's evening here. So we're still in these days of renunciation and detachment, and this is the third day of preparation. We are in the phase of dedication. The mind is dedicated to the reception of the higher spiritual, illuminative, loving energies. And of course, contact, we will emphasize that, but it's contact with the Christ, contact with the hierarchy, contact even with Shambhala. This is one of the great telepathic signs. You know, the Tibetan has a book, Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle. The two signs most connected with the etheric vehicle are Gemini and Aquarius. And so in a way we are, during the seventh ray age impending, strengthening the power, the outreach, the magnetism, the radiation of the etheric vehicle, so that a true contact between all human beings can be established, and eventually between all kingdoms in nature. We're on our way to becoming a sacred planet. And you know, Gemini has so much to do with that. It's so interesting, because this relationship of Venus and Gemini has made it possible for the solar angels to come to Earth. And further, the hierarchical ruler of Gemini is the Earth. And so Gemini is deeply involved in helping to transform our planet into the sacred planet that it will be when it manages, when our Logos manages to take his fifth initiation. That's some time ahead, but we are all working towards the glorification of our planet, when the higher self, the great second-ray soul of our planet, will truly shine forth and overpower the third-ray personality of our planetary Logos, to which we are all subject at this time, as we attempt to release ourselves from the illusion of materialism. Well, these are some thoughts, and I'm so glad some of you have managed to, return night after night, night here at least, day after day, and participate in this lead-up, this build-up, this increase of the point of tension, until we are truly prepared for participation in the Christ's festival. It's an amazingly high point of the year when this energy of love, Gemini is said to be the head of the cosmic Christ. There are huge hints in that idea. So this time when the individual Christ, the solar systemic Christ, and eventually the cosmic Christ can all be linked, stimulating the Christ force within our nature. It's such a beautiful and wonderful energy, and it really holds the solution to the terrible difficulties through which humanity is passing now. So we will now then begin our meditation, going through our customary alignment, and then entering that period of the meditation when we focus our attention on the Buddha and the Christ and on the keynote for this meditation and this day's meditation, which is the deepest kind of spiritual contact. We all begin by realizing that we are the soul in incarnation. We are consciousness immersed within the field of the personality. And yet, for purposes of distinction, we are not that which we seem to be. We are not that personality. Later, of course, all is one, but to begin our tactical withdrawal from illusion, we must realize that we are not the body which we possess, nor are we the etheric field, nor the sentient, emotional, feeling states, nor are we the lower mind. We are that point of being consciousness which has emanated from the one and only point of being consciousness. We are all really the same thing. If we could ever grasp this identicality, this sameness, which characterizes every unit of life. And we are also a fragment of the one consciousness, and yet the whole of that consciousness. So as we withdraw from the personality field, we find ourselves more in the world of light, of love, of spiritual power. And though we are apparently scattered all over the earth, we are really together as one being in one state of multi-dimensional consciousness. We should reach out to each other, contacting each other as souls, as units of being consciousness which somehow pervade each other, till we realize our fusion as one group, fused further still with all the members of the new group of world servers as souls, fused with all the men and women of goodwill as souls, a great community of souls fused with all humanity as souls, whether in the body or out of the body, infused really with every being on this planet, whether unconscious or superconscious. We have to feel this fusion, which is in a way apprehended etherically, and Gemini so promotes this realization of fusion, of oneness. It is said in Gemini, finally, for the true initiate, I serve the One. Every day we have to practice oneness till it becomes such a realization that no veil of illusion can mask it from our consciousness. Hercules in Gemini learned this when, having freed himself from Busiris, he helped to liberate Prometheus, which is, of course, the host of solar angels. And finally, he helped Atlas uphold the burden of the world. Atlas being the great hierarchy of our planet, including Shambhala, including the planetary logos. Thus he worked, and the golden apples of wisdom rolled into his hands as he served. I serve the One. So linked with all the beings of our planet, and especially in the sense of the united humanity, we realize there is no my soul, no thy soul. Those words of possession mean nothing, ultimately. There is only the one all-embracing soul, all-embracing consciousness. And as we approach this Festival of the Christ, we will find that the love of the Christ leads us into the realization of this all-embracing, all-pervading consciousness until we really know. And we should practice this knowing every day. Naught is but me. And when we see the tiny personality as if from a great distance, that personality with which we are often so much identified, we can ask, who is it, what is it that is seeing that distant personality? It is ultimately but one being that we all share. But we must work in the mind, the soul-infused group mind, at a point of tension, which is strengthened by the will to initiate of the first ray, the will to unify of the second ray, the will to evolve of the third ray, the will to harmonize of the fourth ray, the will to act of the fifth ray, the will to cause of the sixth ray, the will to expression of the seventh ray. Our point of tension from which we will launch the Antakarana, the rainbow bridge, the bridge of light, is this point of tension on the higher part of the lower mental plane, the fourth subplane, around the group mental unit. We are the soul-infused group mind, or at least we're using that to build, to imagine this bridge of light, multicolored light, built of all the soul and personality rays of the meditating members, a great cone, vortex, funnel of light reaching up towards, in, towards that point of blue-white light, which is the way we can symbolize the monad on the plane of being, the monadic plane. It's as if the two colors of our rainbow bridge, one color for the personality, one color for the soul, reaches up. Red, first ray; indigo, second ray; green, third ray; yellow, fourth ray; orange, fifth ray; rose, sixth ray; violet, seventh ray. Each of us is generating a bridge of light. Passing through the impersonal spheres of the spiritual triad, where the consciousness begins to take on a planetary scope. The spiritual mind, the spiritual love, the spiritual will, feel then the quality and colors of your individual rainbow bridge. Or use the color indigo if you're not sure of these rays that you have. And feel it anchor in that blue-white diamond, which we imagine as if it can touch pure being. The essential fact of being, the fact that we are, that is the one great fact to assert. That we are being itself. And so the multicolored rainbow bridge of all the meditating group members, and many are meditating even outside this little group, of course, all reaching up in this cone or vortex toward the blue-white diamond. And we will project across the bridge of light this vivid, radiant, synthetic white light, reaching into the realm of pure being. And as we do this, we will sound a second ray note, the note G, as we inwardly repeat to ourselves the great second ray word of power. I see the greatest light. We will visualize the projected beam of white light as we say, I see the greatest light inwardly, and sound the Om outwardly. You can sound it in your home. You can sing the note together. The Om. I see the greatest light. Oh. And we all dwell in this vortex of alignment, connecting that which is highest within us with the point of tension on the mental plane, and during this meditation we can therefore be impressed by that which pertains to these higher realms and to the Father's home. Ultimately, Gemini will link spirit and matter. We are penetrating into these realms, always here but so rarely accessed, where the masters of the wisdom focus their consciousness. This is their home, the realm of the spiritual triad. All three realms, really, but most of them at this time and ever since 1925, focused on the Buddhic plane, the plane of love, wisdom, of harmony, of pure reason, of intuition. It's as if at these times of growing intensity we can feel the increasing concentration of the masters of the wisdom, who are our great elder brothers, the elders of the human race, the graduates, those who have passed through that which we are going through, and one day we shall be as they are. And we will offer our salutations to this great society of organized and illumined minds. That's what they are called from one perspective. The great lodge on high, Christ and his church, the assembly of the saints, so many names. But they are those who are initiates into the mystery of being, as every fifth-degree initiate must be. And we will offer our salutations to stand in solidarity and co-creatorship with this host of supervising beings, the inner government of the world. And since the Buddha is helping at this time, we shall also offer our salutations to him, to the Lord of light and of wisdom. And use your creative imagination as you do this. Salutations to the Buddha, the Lord of Light, the Lord of Wisdom. Salutations to the Christ, the Lord Maitreya, the teacher alike of angels and of men. Salutations to the triangle of masters with whom we work most closely, the Master M, the Master KH, the Master DK. Salutations to the Master Moria, the head of all esoteric schools and organizations. Salutations to the Master Kutumi, the coming Christ of the age of Capricorn, and the Chohan whose labors most prepare for the imminent reappearance of the Lord Maitreya. Salutations to the Master Jwal Kul, who has given us the blue books, who is the foremost messenger of hierarchy, who trains aspirants for initiation. Salutations to your own Master, as you know him to be or conceive him to be. Salutations to the entire spiritual hierarchy of our planet. And then, as a group, and with deepest reverence and in all humility, we imaginatively raise our thought towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known, and identified as the group being, the group soul, in concert with so many others who have been meditating on this day and will, we attune to the presence of Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the world, the youth of endless summers, the Lord of Venusian love. As a group, we try to do this, attempting to realize as much of his purpose as he stands at the center of Shambhala, and we seek to be imbued with his energy, as much of it as we can possibly receive, which is of course very little, but even the touch is of immense benefit. And it is inwardly and silently that we sound a long Om, the inner silent Om, imagining ourselves pervaded by his will and his purpose. One day we will be able to say with fullness, with responsibility, "Thy will, not mine, be done." We can practice it now, and one day at the 4th initiation, and one day at the 6th initiation, we can say that, mean it, and carry it out. Through the infusion of that will and that purpose, we can rise above the illusion and dwell in the world of pure being, even as we carry out our tasks in the world of illusion. The energies come together in Shambhala, especially at these high points, for distribution. They are assembled under the law of assembly for distribution, Gemini being a great sign of distribution. We imagine that the consciousness of Master DK is very close, because he is a great expert in these planetary, systemic, and even cosmic energies, which Gemini is. And so, as if we are outposts of his consciousness, we think of Mercury, the glyph of Mercury, in the yellow color, the mental and the Buddhic color. Mercury connecting the pairs of opposites. We need that interplay in our own nature. The higher self and the lower self. Mercury connecting. And then Venus. We can visualize it, let us say, in the indigo color. There are other colors, but indigo is the color of the second ray, the monadic ray of Venus, and the esoteric color of the fifth ray, which the soul of Venus distributes. Venus drawing together into fusion our soul nature and our personal nature, drawing them together in beauty. Venus. Present and intense. And finally our blue-green earth, our second ray, third ray earth, ultimately with a first ray monad, but that's not our concern now. It is the fusion of the love wisdom soul of our earth and its third ray personality, and Gemini will see to this fusion, the Lord of the constellation Gemini, raising our earth into its higher potentials. The field of service, that's the earth. And that service to the solar logos will one day be the base of the spine's center, the distributing of systemic kundalini. We are sitting on a powerhouse of a planet which must demonstrate love before it can demonstrate will. The redemption of our earth. These three planets intimate to each other, the Earth, Venus, Mercury, the physical, the emotional, the mental, they are close now. They are always here, but now becoming more and more intense, and we can attune with them and receive their qualities. They are right here. And they imbue us, endow us with energies we need. And we can appropriate these energies as the full moon approaches. And from these planetary deities we attempt to attune with the great blue logos, whose instrument, one instrument, is the blazing sun. Every time we look at the sun, we are beholding an instrument of expression of the great blue logos, indigo blue, synthetic blue, the Lord of love wisdom, a great heart center in a cosmic logos. And every one of us, we have our spiritual home within the sun. As monads, we inhere within the sun, which means within the solar logos. something of that great Lord of love and wisdom. The consuming fire of love can consume us at this time of Gemini, when the highest quality of love is manifest, available. We offer our heartfelt gratitude to the Lord of Love, our ASALA Logos, a great Christ force, let us have this great being in mind, ever present, infusing us entirely in our essential nature. And then on to the twins, the beautiful stars of Gemini. Have you ever seen them? It's really an oblong square they create, and all Masons will know the meaning of that. The fountain of all proportion and of all music in the cosmos, our local cosmos. Not 2 stars, but really 6 stars. Pollux, a supergiant, and Castor, 3 pairs of stars, the 1 and the 6. But for all practical purposes, they are the twins, the brothers in the light, and their quality of light is the light of interplay. Just as we need the interplay between soul and personality, they have a great cosmic interplay. And as DK tells us, this is a line of light, light beams, revealing that which opposes, or the basic duality of manifestation, the relationship of spirit and of form. It is the conscious light of that relationship. We ponder that. The words are there before you on your screen if you need to refer. The conscious light of that relationship between spirit and matter form. Are we conscious of that which is the soul within? Even of that which is the spirit within the soul? One day, under pure reason, we will know the nature of all this connectedness within the cosmic ethers, beginning with the Buddhic plane. Things will not just be out there. We will be all things and the connection between them. So as if we're looking at this beautiful constellation, really with quite a number of stars, but the twins being foremost, we begin to feel this energy quality of Gemini, which is growing in intensity as we approach the full moon, at least for us on Earth. And Gemini's profound relation to the great second ray of love wisdom. It is the ray which it distributes mostly at this time. Gemini, love wisdom. Gemini, the pillars of wisdom leading into the great temple of hierarchy. Bringing in many rays through the planets, where every planet has more than one ray, just as we do. But love wisdom above all. Gemini, Sirius, our solar logos, Mercury, Venus, our Earth. What an alignment that is. And so blazingly brilliant at this time of the year, when we can realize our destiny. So many of us, maybe 85% of humanity, moving through Venus towards Sirius, under the light of Gemini. We can rise into the ethereal at this time. Our cosmic ethers, so connected to Gemini. But yet for all that, Gemini is very practical. For the forces of reconstruction are released at this time. Rebuilding, reconstructing human civilization according to the divine plan revealed in Aries under the forces of restoration, and according to the brilliant light of Shambhala revealed at the time of Wesak. But the building will occur and the temple will be rebuilt. Gemini and the rebuilding of the temple and the coming of the mysteries again, into which the pillars of Gemini admit us. And human beings will come from all the darkened valleys of the land, and they will be given the light they seek. And Gemini will be so much a part of this bestowal. And so we will ponder, as I'm sure we are every day, as we approach the full moon, the mantram for Gemini. I recognize my other self, and in the waning of that self I grow and glow. We attempt to grasp the esoteric significance. What is that other self, that distant other self? And what is the self that waxes, grows, and glows? I recognize my other self, and in the waning of that self, I grow and glow. as John the Baptist, who was a Gemini, we are told, said, "I must decrease, that he may increase." The Christ in us increasing. Who is the eye that grows and glows? Ultimately, not only the soul, but the divine observer itself, the monad, the being. I recognize my other self. And in the waning of that self, I grow and glow. So really get the feeling of that I. The Christ, the Buddha, the pillars of the East and West, the great Geminian brothers, the foremost world teachers of our time, they are the brothers in the light as far as humanity is concerned. They are the union of these two hemispheres of the earth. And the Buddha in Shambhala and the Christ representing hierarchy, they are the fusion of the monad and the soul-infused personality. They are glorious beings, so real beyond the images, the inadequate images we have. Their energy is astonishing. And as the day of the full moon approaches, we are told that on that day the Christ preaches the last sermon of the Buddha before the assembled hierarchy and before the hearts and minds of all human beings. What did that last sermon emphasize? Self-reliance. 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 Reliance upon the one and only self who is the true teacher and the true being within. Every other teacher but points the way to that ultimate teacher, the true being within. And so as we approach, and tomorrow night we will deal with the last sermon, we will take a selection. We have dealt with the need of being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful in overcoming the body's cravings. We have dealt with the need to be strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful in overcoming the grief that arises from sensations. The Buddha would not compromise except that we be free. And now, speaking to Ananda, his foremost disciple, the Buddha says in a section of this last sermon, and so also, when he, the disciple, thinks or reasons or feels, let him so regard his thought that being strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful, he may, whilst in the world, overcome the grief which arises from the craving due to ideas or to reasoning or to feeling. We strenuously, thoughtfully, mindfully, even while in the world, must overcome the grief which arises from craving, the desire nature, the craving due to ideas or to reasoning or to feeling. This is what the Buddha has expected of us and expects of us. That we will strenuously overcome these cravings, which lead us back and back again into rebirth, into the dense physical body of the planetary Logos, not into his true, living, etheric nature. And so let us all affirm in ourselves the fact that we can be strenuous, thoughtful, and mindful in overcoming the grief which arises from the craving due to ideas or to reasoning or to feeling, and let us resolve to be so. We are more powerful than we know when we are truly self-reliant. And so we offer our profound gratitude to the Lord Buddha for all he has done to illumine humanity, and all he will do during the Aquarian Age as well. From Shambhala. And we turn our attention to the Lord Maitreya, the Lord of Love, the one who gathers into himself at this time all the aspiration of all human beings and presents it before Shambhala, supplicating, ready to receive the blessing for all human beings. And inevitably for the lower kingdoms of nature, because it flows on. And every day, we are told, in this 3-day period, he himself intones the great invocation, alone. And so this is our chance, through imagination, to attune with the Lord Maitreya, imagining him sounding the great invocation, as if hearing him do so. Each of us can imagine his nature in our own way, imagine his voice in our own way. And thus we do. We imagine the Lord Maitreya sounding the great invocation. In whatever our language may be, it matters not. We imagine. And also, again, listening inwardly with great care, we listen to the Christ and the entire hierarchy, intoning the third stanza of the great invocation. We are told that this happens. And as we inwardly hear these words, which so many of us know, of course, and it's on the screen as well. We imagine this amazing might of the Christ and his hierarchy, intoning the words which concern the will of God, the little wills of men, and the purpose which the masters know and serve. We hear them inwardly. What an energy is generated in this sounding. With the hierarchy, then, with the great Lord, we focus on the third keynote. Every day a different keynote, and today, contact. So simply stated, the keynote of contact, of a closer relation between the Christ and his people, between hierarchy and humanity. Let us ponder, imagine, visualize, understand the meaning of these words. A closer relation between Christ and his people, between hierarchy and humanity. So we can envision that we and all human beings will come into ever closer relation with the Christ. And with his hierarchy. It is happening. It is real. It's going to intensify. And people such as ourselves must learn to bear the burden of that contact. And we imagine what the reality of this contact will bring in terms of the expression of the will to good on our planet. This contact must be real, and we must do all we can within our consciousness and our service to make it real. No vague thoughts, the reality of this energy contact. Because it is a reality already on the planes of the spiritual triad. It's a fact. And that etheric, cosmic etheric fact must be brought right down into these dense levels, into the systemic ethers, and even into the outer rind of our being, the least real part of ourselves, the dense physical. Through and through, from the highest to the lowest. For Gemini, the twins are the pillars, from the highest to the lowest. And though they have no seventh ray now, it is built into them from the past, from the highest to the lowest, from heaven to earth. The pillars of Gemini extend, and we will to bring that which is highest in us right down here into that part of us which participates in the world of illusion, within the dense physical body of the planetary logos. We can do this. And so, we as a meditating group affirm our deep solidarity with the Buddha, the Christ, the assembled hierarchy, even the Lord of the world. And we seek to identify with them that deepest part of us which is the same as what they are. We seek to identify with them, and actually to merge our purpose with their purpose. So that divine purpose may work through the plan and manifest on earth through every one of us as agents of that plan and purpose. We can do this. We can merge with them in the silence and represent them in the lower worlds. We pause for a moment of appreciation for the illumined, loving energies of the constellation Gemini, the Lord of the constellation Gemini, and we feel ourselves increasingly imbued with these energies, which are growing in strength as the full moon approaches. And on this day, in union with the Christ, the hierarchy, all disciples in the world, really with all human beings who can thus respond, we sound together the third stanza of the great invocation, sensing that it is the will of Shambhala, that Shambhala, the Christ, the hierarchy, and humanity may come into true and real contact, and thereby cooperate with the redemption of our planet. And so, in the alignment from the highest to the lowest, clear channel straight through, we sound the third stanza of the great invocation. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. Love, resurrection, contact. And tomorrow at the same time, we will work with the last sermon of the Buddha in what is also a pre-Gemini full moon webinar leading up to 2:55 a.m. GMT, when my wife Tuya will lead a meditation service broadcast with music and image for the actual moment of the Gemini full moon at 4:11 and 27 seconds a.m. GMT, and then later in the day 8:30 a.m. GMT, we will have some hours of lecture and discussion about the ASALA Gemini Festival, about the meaning of the mysterious number 108, about the Grand Cross in the skies at this time, and about the Masters themselves as they have lived in certain designated places in Tibet, and how they can be contacted on the subtler planes. So friends, I want to thank you very much for attending this third in our series of meditations. Tomorrow will be the fourth, and then we will continue on with our exact Gemini full moon broadcasts. Keep your point of tension. Let it build, let it intensify, and may the power of love, above all, dissolve every possible illusion at this time of contact, of resurrection, and of love. Thank you, and Brett and Joe and Kay and the team will get this video out to you as soon as possible if you wish to use it for other purposes. Many blessings, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.